We able to get?
Check 1, 2, 1, 2,
We able
3.
to? Good afternoon. I call this special meeting of the Columbus City Council for December the 28th, 2021 to order. Welcome everyone. That's okay. I just let myself finish. Welcome everyone. I'd like to ask Reverend Dismukes, if he would, to open our meeting in prayer.
Mayor, Council, may we invoke the Spirit of the Lord.
Most gracious and eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this privilege. We pray right now, and we acknowledge the fact that you're God and you're God alone. We acknowledge your divine power, and we ask right now for you to pour your Spirit into this meeting. Bless the vision of this mayor and these council persons. Anoint them afresh, O God. We ask right now that the business of the city of Columbus is done, dear God, with unity in mind, so that each and every member of this community is represented, no matter what ward or no matter what area they may reside in. We give you glory today, and we realize, oh God, great decisions must be made. We pray your Spirit will move and guide as these decisions are made, dear God, so that the blessings from you will flow through whoever is elected or whoever is appointed. We give you glory today, and we thank you for this privilege. We ask right now, God, that you will be merciful and kind. We ask right now for a great movement of your Spirit, so that Columbus will be blessed, and we will be a shining light, a beacon of light on the side of the road. We give you glory, and we give you honor, and we give you praise. For there is no other help in this world that we know. And we ask it all in the precious, majestic, sovereign name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Dismukes. Council, we will move directly into the policy agenda. First up is to discuss and approve a K-9 training program. Officer?
Good afternoon. I'm Officer Harrison, Columbus Police Department, K-9 officer. Recently, a couple months ago, we retired our existing K-9, K-9 Stanley, and I am here today to seek approval from the mayor and council to go and pick up a new K-9 out of Denver, Indiana, and then also to get approval to attend training for that K-9 through the Mississippi Law Enforcement Agency and the Orlando Police Department. Cost for to go pick up the K-9 would be about $200 for fuel. The training would be free of charge through the Mississippi Law Enforcement Agency. It's an 8-week training. I'll be gone from January to March. Also, the cost of the K-9 is about $10,000. I have taken up donations about $5,457, I think, is the amount that I have got, and I want to ask the city if they would match those donations as well.
5,000 what?
$5,475.
So you're asking them only to match
Yes,
what's
sir.
necessary to get to 10,000?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir. And I'm also here to answer any questions if you guys had any.
And you explained to me that the council had voted for you to be able to raise the funds, and
Yes,
then you
sir.
got fundraising letter and stuff that
Yes, sir.
was approved. And so you've been out for how long now trying to raise this?
Started July, so yes, sir, since July. People are still currently wanting to send in donations too as well, so.
And the urgency is that you need to be able to go this weekend, right?
Right, yes, sir. So the Mississippi Law Enforcement Agency and Hernando Police Department, they're going up to Denver, Indiana this Sunday to pick up the K-9s, and training starts January 10th. So that's the urgency to try and get it approved. So.
If I may add, I would like to say when we did retire Stanley, you know, me and you had
Right.
multiple conversations on, you know, and he actually retired. You adopted Stanley.
I
as
did,
well,
I
so
did, yes.
He still has ownership of Stanley. He's a perfect person. He loves animals, and we need that in our department so we can be more effective, efficient, and proactive with getting a lot of things done. And like I said, he did fundraise a lot of this money on his own. The original price of the dog was what, $23,000? And if you go to the free program, you get it at a discount rate
Of $10,000.
of which he's already raised what, $5,500, give or take. So he's asking for $4,500. I personally don't have a problem with voting for it because we do need a K-9 unit. I have seen him, he has not seen me, but I have seen him in action with the K-9 unit, with the K-9, and he's great. You know, he got the target that he needed to get, so. That's good.
And this would come from what source? Is this from the police department budget or what? Just asking where we're getting it.
We probably have to, I don't think it's in there. I'm not sure if he budgeted it or not. We'd have to check, or it would have to come from the general fund.
I do know Chief had mentioned something about his training fund, but I'm not too much familiar on that part, but he did mention seeing about if it could come from that as well.
We could go back and check the minutes and see when they voted, if there was a location for it at that time. Do y'all remember voting on it?
Council,
Yes. Yes, sir.
Since the city of Starksville went into their funds to fund, hire 2 policemen, we couldn't go into our funds and give him this for this. They hired 2 policemen out of their fund.
Or CARES Act. I said CARES Act money still sitting there too.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I know that they did hire 2 officers.
I don't know.
I don't know if it extends to buying a dog, though. I wish I'd have known that question was coming up. I'd have taken time to try to research that.
Well, I think this is a crucial issue here with the rate the city is going in with the with PD. I don't see how we can lose with this, you know.
It's such a small amount
we
of
need
money.
this. We got to find the money somewhere. I think, Mr. Mayor, we need to find it somewhere so we can fund this. You know, wherever we can get it from.
Do we have a motion?
Joe is holding the check.
Yeah, here's a check from council lady to check over help too.
Thank you.
Oh, that's less on us.
I'll make a
More money?
Yeah.
Allow them to get the dog and take it out of joint funds if we have to.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Jones and a second from Councilman Beard. Any more discussion? All in favor, raise your right hands. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, officer.
Thank you, officer.
Catch somebody now. Let's catch somebody.
Unless Wagner wants to step up and make
Thank you.
that first deed to the city.
What did he say?
Unless Wagner wants to make a donation.
Yes, but we will make that statement that donations are still accepted to help with the K-9 unit, which is a very important unit for Columbus. I think right now we've had to borrow the Air Force bases, which are far out there. Okay, thank you, council. We'll move forward for discuss and approve the general service agreement and task order number 1 for Wagner Engineering.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. This agreement is, as far as legal instruments goes, pretty simple, I would say. The part 1 deals with services, and it's explained what services will be provided in Exhibit A to the agreement. The way it'll work is the engineering firm will submit to the Mayor and City Council task orders for your approval. Once you approve the task order, then they'll go to work with the amount of money that's set forth on the task order for that work. The term of the agreement is it's to last for a year, and it'll renew automatically unless earlier terminated. And on that subject, you or Wagner, at the election of either party, could terminate on 7 days' notice. So it's a pretty straightforward agreement. Otherwise, it specifies some what I would consider rather standard kind of contract terms, which if you want to hear about them, I would suggest that the firm is here, and
Yes.
they're probably better suited to go into the details than I am.
I want to say too that Jeff was very thorough in the agreement and made some suggestions, which they all agreed to. So we really appreciate your close eye on it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to do, and the firm agreed to every suggestion I made without any debate over it, so.
We appreciate that.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council.
Good afternoon.
First, I want to really thank you on behalf of Wagner Engineering for having the confidence in us to select us a couple of weeks ago. I want to go through maybe the scope of work, not necessarily the technical, the legal issues. I think your attorney have done a great job representing you, so I'm going to focus really what is the work is about. As you all know, the legislative session is going to start next week. The state is in the process right now of receiving requests for matching the city's Arpa funds. Many communities also that are asking the counties to also participate in leveraging some of the city funds as well in these areas. So the first step really is to actually develop a very quick needs assessment to try to figure out what specific programs are eligible, what are areas from a policy perspective that you want to spend your ARPA funds on, and then develop a funding strategy to figure out how we can match the money that you're going to be spending in different programs with the county and state resources. So hopefully you can maximize the opportunity for doing something really that's going to be transformational for the city of Columbus. So one of the things that the first step of this process is actually going to start next week, next Wednesday. We'll have a team of our engineers that are going to be coming in, meeting engineers and planners. They're going to be meeting with the Public Works Department, with all of the department heads. They're going to be meeting with the Planning Department, really to better understand what their priorities are. And then after that meeting, we're actually going to go and tour the city to look at areas of concerns that they have. The following week, we are actually planning to have one-on-one meetings with each one of you. We want to ride your word to try to actually figure out specifically what are your concerns within your ward area. So we can also figure out what your needs are, what your constituents' needs, and how those fit within what is allowed under the what's eligible under the ARPA regulations and requirements. After this is completed, we will begin actually putting together a document that basically summarizes all of what we heard, what we've collected, the evaluation, what we've done, the engineering analysis that we've completed, and develop a project list that actually include each of the projects that we are recommending, along with a proposed budget of how much it's going to cost to do this. And we break it down by different components. And some will include drainage, some might include community facilities. I know there's some of you might have an interest in other areas that when we meet with you one-on-one, we will try to ascertain all of these areas to see what it is. So we'll come up with a total budget, and I'm sure the budget is going to be far exceed what the $2.5 million, the $5-point-something million that you already have from ARPA. So the challenge is going to be really how we're going to maximize this. So an element of this also will be a funding strategy to figure out how we can leverage it so you can actually start working on some improvements within the community to actually do this as quickly as possible. So that's in essence really what the task order is about. So any questions about this? I know it's in front of you if you have any questions about that. And again, we are crunched in time because we wanted to complete the work, and typically this takes at least 60 days, but we're going to try to shrink it because of the legislative session. Because we need to also meet with the state legislators within this area and the leadership in Jackson to actually present your case why you need to match those funds. So that's going to take some time, and they're going to go through the appropriation process, and we really need to be in a position to make the official request to the state sometime probably late January, early February. That's probably even as it is, it's probably pushing it too late, but we're going to do the best we can to try to shrink our schedule to basically allow you to make this request on a timely basis to the legislators. The legislators will actually finalize the appropriation process by the end of March, so you will know how much you're getting, and concurrently, I guess, with the county, Once the mayor schedules meeting with the supervisors as well, we're going to make a similar request to the county board of supervisors as well. One of the elements, again, even when you look at all of the state and federal resources, from our perspective, I'm confident, and this is what we find in many areas, that there's going to be probably significant more need than what the resources that you have just from Arpa. So we'll also identify other sources of funding, whether it's grant opportunities from federal government or it requires maybe going and visiting with our congressional delegates in DC, outlining what the requirements are. So all of these areas will be outlined in this report that we will complete in the next 60 days. So any questions about this?
Could you speak to the watershed-based stormwater process? You'd mentioned earlier that might be a good starting place to partner with the county on.
Right. Yeah, so I think if you recall, I think that this presentation that you have in front of you, this is really what I ended the presentation a couple of weeks ago on. So the first 3 slides are a repetition of what I gave you before. The last slide is an additional item. So I'm going to talk really about maybe what we see is coming, not only for the watershed, but other elements. Mm-hmm. So obviously this is a transformational opportunity, not only for the Arpa project, but also the $1.2 trillion from the infrastructure bill that passed Congress a few weeks ago. So the challenge is going to be how we're going to really transform the city in the decline in population, turning around the poverty level, or improving that condition and well-being of the citizens of Columbus. So all of these areas require for us to actually assess where we are today, what are the strengths of the community, what are the areas that we need to improve on, and then looking at really what is it we need to change and do differently to allow you to actually become more of a progressive city, the city that the pastor left is talking about being a light on a hill. I think Columbus has a lot of potential, and without a doubt, if you have the right plan and the right strategy of how to accomplish this, you'll be able to lift every aspect of the community. The communities that are left behind, that are economically depressed, and again, this is really the administration policy. They want to make sure that they are addressing issues of social justice, issues of economic justice, environmental justice. So we need to incorporate all of this into this process to allow you to actually get the maximum funding possible. So we outlined, and again, I'm not going to go through these again because I've described them a couple of weeks ago. What are the areas that we see as strength? And I'm sure as we go through this process, we're going to learn a lot more, and we're going to get a lot more input from each of you, and really ultimately with the constituents as well. But also there's some hindrances, some limitations that you also need to overcome in order for you to be able to be successful, and we outlined those. So one of the areas we discovered that really your comprehensive plan has some elements of it that's good, but there's many areas that really actually are lacking. One of those components, for example, is that you don't really have you might have a listing of projects, but you don't know what the cost of those projects are. So you don't know whether you need to spend or your need is $10 million or $50 million. So this needs to be quantified. Then there's no strategy really how to fund those resources. So to make sure that you actually turn these plans into realities instead of those plans being sitting on the shelf collecting dust. So the updating the comprehensive plan is going to be an important element. One of the areas, I guess, as we learned more about Columbus over the last year, you have an acute drainage problem throughout the city. Part of it is caused because of lack of maintenance. Part of it is because of lack of funding. Your infrastructure is deteriorating and is getting aged. Another part is that really is beyond your control because some of the flow is actually coming from outside of the area. So typically what we really recommend is that because water does not know political boundaries, this would be an ideal project to actually have a collaborative project between the county and the city, where it will be a county-wide watershed program. And that's when we've done those probably in the last 3 years. We've done probably county-wide and watershed plans for at least 26 different watersheds across the state of Mississippi. So the value for this is that you not only you will solve the problems within your political boundary, but you identify what problems are outside that are actually causing you problems with drainage problems within your area, and try to find really how to fund it and actually resolve that problem as well. So the comprehensive plan is really what we're going to recommend to be a joint effort with the county when we meet with them, and we'll make a presentation to the county to try to convince them that this is the right investment for the county and for the city and for the citizens of Lowndes County and Columbus. So did I address your question about the watershed? So there's other elements that also typically an element of a transportation plan, an element of a comprehensive plan, including a transportation element. Unfortunately, today you cannot pay for transportation planning as part of the ARPA funds, because transportation was actually excluded. It's only you're allowed for infrastructure to spend it on water, wastewater, stormwater, and broadband. However, there is a bill in Congress right now that actually has been passed the Senate and is in consideration at the House to actually allow communities to spend up to 35% of their funds or up to $10 million on roadway projects. So if this bill passes, then this will give you an opportunity to also improve your roads, not only just on the drainage and other elements of infrastructure. So if you look at the last sheet, this is kind of a summary. What we described earlier, the ARPA community assessment. This is basically the task order that's in front of you that we discussed a few minutes ago, and that's really what we're asking you to approve today, because we need to immediately start working on this so we can meet the deadlines for the state legislators. The other elements that we have here are things that we believe need to be done, but they don't need to be done immediately. As we finish the first task, we will make recommendations of what the next steps need to be for you to be able to be successful in this effort. So any questions on this? And I don't want to spend a lot more time here.
Council, do we have any questions?
We still got that 1.3 billion earmark, right, for employee things until we figure out what we're gonna do with it? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think anything's been voted on to change that. All right, do I have a motion to approve the general service agreement and task order number 1 for Wagner?
So moved.
Have a motion by Councilman Green. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Councilwoman DeChico. Any discussion?
This is the $55,000 thing right here, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
What?
This other person.
On your solution budget plan, did you go over that? Could you highlight that a little bit for me, please?
Which one?
With the
The budget?
Yeah, the whole budget.
Right. So the $55,000, the first item on the list is this task order that we are presenting to you today. This is basically what we're going to do in starting meeting with the staff, meeting with you all, and really develop a strategy of what is going to cost, so we can make the request to the county and to the state for supplemental funding to your ARPA funds. So that's the first step, and that's really the only thing we're asking you to address today.
I understand that, but as going down this list, we're looking at the rest, updated comprehensive 125, transportation 195, $85 for efficiency and effectiveness. So did we get a percentage of what is he charging for all this, Mr. Attorney? 5%?
A percentage of what he's charging, I don't know. I mean, these are dollar amounts he's proposing to charge.
I see at the bottom it says 5% on the total.
Well, this is the
APR.
5% is for the ARPA compliance. So if you wanted to actually use our services to ensure that you're complying, that you don't really have any problems with if you get audited, then these will apply. And again, each one of those, it will be at your discretion to vote on as we're presenting it to you separately.
Every other category is a dollar figure. You're estimating.
Right.
The bottom line for compliance is 5% of our total ARPA funds.
That's correct. Right, and again, you know, on the right column, you know, what we listed here is like what you're doing now, what you have approved, 100% of this cost can come from your ARPA funds. Some elements, you know, a portion of it might be a part of it, and some of it will have to come from the general fund. So as we present these solutions to you, we're going to basically tell you where the sources of funding need to come from as well. So you can, so if you get audited, you have documentation why you use the ARPA funds for these activities.
And each category on here, you're gonna present the city council a task order for that item, which they have the discretion to approve or not approve, correct?
Absolutely. I guess this is really, I wanted to expand on really what I presented a couple of weeks ago, so you can just have an understanding of really what the next steps to accomplish what you're trying to do. But as we finish the initial phase, the end of the report will actually make recommendations of what you need to do next. And at that time, you know, we can sit down and really discuss it together is really which items you need to move on, which ones you need to delay. So we're not asking you actually to do anything on the other items. This is for information purposes at this time.
So with the community assessment, where do you plan on starting at?
Well, we're going to start throughout the city. So that's what I'm saying. We're going to meet with all of your staff first. Then we're going to meet with each one of you and look at your ward, really understand what your concerns, what your constituents' concerns.
So what they doing like the next week or two?
Yeah, they took it Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, we're going to actually meet with the staff here. The week after next, Ayad and Stephen will be contacting you all to start meeting one-on-one with each one of you.
And you said the legislature starts when?
Well, the legislative session starts next Tuesday.
So after this, then you're going?
Yeah, after we finish the report, because we have to know what the ask is going to be.
Right.
So we can't know the ask until we know what the project's.
That's what I'm saying, because you have 45 days to do the community assessment. So is that not going to intertwine in with you trying to get down to Jackson?
Yeah, we're going to have to work concurrently on a lot of these things. So we will probably have a draft before we finish the complete report. We will have a draft to identify what the cost of each of the elements, and we're gonna have to come back to you because you have to make some policy decisions out of your $5.6 million. How you're gonna allocate it? You know, some of it you might want to spend on drainage, some of it you might want to spend on water and wastewater, some of it you want to spend on community improvement. So we want to share with you the results of what we found from talking to your staff and talking to you, and understanding what the need is and what's eligible and what's not. I mean, you might want to be, for example, if you want to say, I want to fix this road, today the roadway is not eligible for ARPA. So we're going to come back and say, well, maybe we need to find another source of funding for this. But for the ARPA component, these are the areas that are eligible. And then you, as policymakers, need to make the decision really how you need to allocate those funds, you know, with our recommendation from a technical perspective.
And from what we were discussing earlier today, the understanding was that some of the things that you could potentially recommend, which is why I mentioned the wastewater, those are high areas of potential matching funds, like with the county and stuff. One of the things to remember too, and I brought this up when I visited with them at noon or at 11, was that because of our standing with our current audit, that could potentially affect matching funds on these two, and potentially when they might go for particular matches on these. So every time they come back with an idea of where we could potentially spend this money and match this money, y'all will have to approve it. So, and that's when we would discuss where's the funding to cover that. The first 55, as you're saying, is coming out of the ARPA funds itself.
That's correct.
But then as we look at each project, the idea is to see where's the biggest match, where can we get the biggest bang for our buck as we move down our priority list for the city. So we're kind of doing it not in the ideal way. This is more of a piecemeal in the beginning to try to get us started. But again, this is once in a lifetime money that's transformational. And
yeah, without a doubt. But I think the reason why we're squeezing all of this in a very short period of time, because many other communities have been planning for this for 6, 7, 8 months.
Right.
Unfortunately, we are now starting the legislative session and we're beginning our work.
That's my whole thing,
Yeah.
like, how's the time?
It's going to put a lot of pressure on us, but we're going to do everything in our power to actually make sure that you are not going to be left behind with the legislators.
Right, that's the only thing, you got
They don't
45
adjourn,
days, that's a
they don't
long
adjourn
time.
way up until.
Until the end of March, early April. Right.
Is it your understanding that it's not set that it's a first come, first served, but it would obviously be best to be in there in the beginning, but they're not going to make that decision until March, so.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to make the final decision until the appropriation process finishes. And really, actually, on the Senate side, they have a subcommittee that actually deals with the ARPA, how they're going to manage it. The House does not even does not have a similar committee. So that committee has not completed its work yet. The committee is going to make a recommendation to the appropriation committee. And then the House and the Senate have to agree on what the rules are. So our state legislators are not fully aligned on how this needs to work, which kind of works to your advantage because if they had their act together, probably would have been a disadvantage. But I think we have probably 30 to 45 days that we can work through this process here.
And my last question is, I asked for you to be paid, that can come out of ARPA, and you just made the statement, yes, maybe? Some of it needs to come from somewhere else? What was that?
For this element, for what we're asking you to do today, 100% of it come from ARPA. If you look at the first component, the 55,700 that can be completed in 45 days, 100% of this is going to come from ARPA funds.
But when we drop down to the efficiency and effectiveness, only 50% approximately could come from ARPA, and we have to come up with the other 50%.
Yeah, and that's what we'll do. When we develop the detailed scope of work, we're going to look at the scope and see how it matches with what is eligible. And we're going to price what is allowed under ARPA and what's not allowed under ARPA. And we'll share this information with you. We'll say it's 40%, 70%, 80%, or maybe it could be 100%. But this is our estimate right now because we really haven't developed the scope of work yet for each one of those elements.
Looking at this if we have to come up with money from our general fund, and some is from ARPA, some might be from general fund, when you meet with the department heads and they give their assessment based on your assessment, will you be able to recommend what could be done that this money can come from ARPA? Because that's where we want the money to be spent if possible.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're going to try to maximize the amount that you spend through ARPA, but there is something that by law you cannot do. So we cannot recommend something that we're going to get you in trouble and you wind up spending it on something that's not eligible, and then you have to reimburse it.
But would you be in a position to recommend, no, this is legal, this can be spent through ARPA funds?
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe that will make a decision and what the department head will decide on.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, when we meet with them and if they tell us, here's our need, and we tell them this is not eligible, I mean, we're probably going to move into another project area. So we will have this discussion with them next week when we meet with them.
Now, my other question is, once you do your department head meetings and do assessment, this needs to be done and this would be approved, how would you go about setting priorities, which would be done first?
Well, again, we're going to first, it's not only about what the department heads want, but also what you as policymakers want. That's why we're going to meet with each one of you individually as well to understand what your constituents need, what your needs within the community. And then we're going to take all this input there and come up with a plan of recommendation. So I'm just throwing out numbers. I don't know what it is. If you have $5.6 million, but maybe your need is $30 million, for example. Could be higher, could be lower. We haven't done the work yet. We're going to say, if you take your ARPA funds, matching it with some county funds, if the county approves it, and state funds, maybe between the three of them you can generate $10, $12, $13 million. Then we will look at what you as policymakers want to make this as a top priority within those amounts. And then the secondary tier that is not funded by ARPA, we need to identify other funding sources, whether going through, for example, in drainage. We can look at FEMA BRIC program where you can get funding from. You can look at NRCS. You can look at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that fund drainage projects. So there's a lot more resources outside of the ARPA, but the ARPA is the top #1 priority right now, is what we're trying to focus on.
Getting back to the ARPA fund, I keep hearing the word match. Is that 50 or 100 are based on the qualification, that percentage they match?
Yeah, they have not made a decision. And if you ask different legislators, they will tell you. As people in the Senate, under the Lieutenant Governor has some ideas. The House, the Speaker of the House and the people in the House of Representatives have a totally different concept. They're going to be going through this process to determine whether they're going to match it 1-to-1, or they're going to allow other communities to maybe get more than 1-to-1. So our recommendation probably, and what we've been doing with other clients, is actually ask for more than what the 1-to-1 match. So if you're going to basically put $5 million, maybe ask them for $7 or $10 million. And if you pool the resources with the county, for example, on drainage activities, let's say that you committed $4 million to drainage. I'm just throwing this as an example. You go to the county and say, we would like for you to actually have a joint project with us, and let them commit $4 million of their funds into this program. This will make it $8 million. Maybe you can ask the state legislators to put $12 million into it. So you might have total $20 million. So we really, until we first we have to get the concurrence with the county, because we haven't made the official ask. So we know what the amount. Then we can determine what the amount we need to ask from the legislators. But you know, if you look through the numbers, just the cities in Mississippi are receiving about $300-some million. The state is getting about $1.8 billion. They have some expenditures that they wanted to do for COVID relief and other issues related to healthcare and other elements. The numbers that we're hearing from the legislators is probably going to be around another $300-400 million. So they're going to have probably for infrastructure activities, probably somewhere around maybe 3 or maybe 1.4 billion to do this. So the amount that they have is probably 3 or 4 times the amount that the counties and cities have. So I would probably recommend to you to ask for more than 1-to-1. And if you get 1-to-1, great. If you don't, obviously if you get more, that's what will be to your advantage as well. But again, it's going to be also dependent on your relationship with the local legislators and the strength of the local legislators with the leadership. So we need to actually meet with the local legislators, and then we also need to go to Jackson and meet with the leadership as well. And of course, we'll facilitate this once the report is semi-complete. It won't be completely finished, but so we can have a credible presentation to the legislators in this process.
Any other questions?
Any more questions?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can I introduce Stephen?
Yes, please do.
You all know, Stephen Thompson is a project manager with us in the Jackson office right now. And Stephen is an accountant by trade, but he used to be the general manager for Canton Municipal Utilities. And he's going to be moving to this area as well to be able to really serve this project. So he'll be a project manager of this. So you're going to be hopefully hearing from him a lot more in the future.
Nice to meet all of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Look forward to working with each one.
Council, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we close?
Well, there's one question on the project manager for the city. I see we have Mr. Alexander, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna be here during the whole process?
Probably not. What I would say no, because we're in the process of hiring somebody. I'm going to try to have Mark at the meeting next Wednesday to help him get started. And then, it's my understanding, I'm going to visit with him more today and see that, you know, if he can work with them through the beginning of it, just to get us started.
And it's, no.
Any other questions?
Technical thing, but when you do have a COO,
He would-
replace Mark,
he would take
we'll
over
need
that
to
role.
amend this agreement to add that name to it. Yes,
That's good enough.
good point.
Anything else? And if not, this concludes our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Meeting adjourned.